Welcome to Our Whole Lives Taking Flight. My name is Reverend Amy Johnson, and I am the Minister for Sexuality, Education, and Justice in the United Church of Christ.
And hello, I am Dr. Melanie Davis. I am the Unitarian Universalist Association's Our Whole Lives Program Manager, and we welcome you to this webinar.
Welcome to this recording. We are going to give you some information about some updates we have coming, especially the long awaited 10th through 12th grade curriculum. So buckle up and here we go.
I'm going to share my screen now. This has always seemed so fraught when we do this. Here we go. Slideshow. Okay. In addition to talking about the 10-12 edition, Amy, would you like to introduce what else we're going to talk about today?
Sure, we're going to give you kind of an overall, mostly concentrated on 10 through 12, but an overall kind of view of updates as we're having them right now. It's been a lot recently, and we know that we've done similar webinars before, but today we're going to focus on the 10 through 12th grade second edition. We're going to give you a few updates about the K1 second edition. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the reprint that was just done for the 7th through 9th grade second edition, and some revisions in our Whole Lives program assumptions and poster graphics, and then looking ahead.
All right, so as Amy said, this has been long awaited. This is an edition, a second edition written by Nadine Thornhill, Dr. Nadine Thornhill, who is a Canadian sexuality educator. As we're keeping the 12 webinar format, and we're using the same format that you're familiar with from the earlier editions, where they're turnkey workshops. There isn't a lot of mixing and matching that you have to do. We have some new topics, but also we've really worked hard to include some of the activities that facilitators and OWL graduates have told us are really their favorite things, their most memorable activities. We have updated facts, scientific facts, and language, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we've had it professionally reviewed for accuracy, which we feel is really important. We've paid increased attention to racial and multicultural issues. So in the past, in other editions, we have had multicultural scenarios and names of people in those scenarios. But this time we're actually bringing up issues. So we're deepening the critical thinking that our high schoolers are doing. We have new illustrations. You might recall that we've always, in previous editions, had male and female, and now we have illustrations that are not labeled by gender and reflect different body sizes and different skin tones. This, like the kindergarten through first grade edition, this is going to be available in 3 formats. So we'll have the secular Our Whole Lives that can be used in any setting. And then we will also have a version of that secular information within the context of Unitarian Universalist faith material and within the context of United Church of Christ faith material. Release dates have been all over the map, and Amy and I know better than anybody that we cannot put a stake in the ground at any point because we're not only reliant on our schedule, but critical reader schedules and publication schedules and paper supply. But the plan is at this moment to release the hard copies of Secular Owl in early January 2025. And then the faith versions will be available certainly before March. That is the goal at this point. So you can order the secular version if you want to start your program in January, but you would also then have to buy the version with the faith material if you want that later. We are no longer making well, you can get, if you buy the, like, let's say you buy the OWL UU, you can have a PDF of OWL UCC at no cost. But if you buy the secular version, you would not get the faith version for free. So just be aware. And maybe if you want the faith material, order that edition right from the get-go.
Yeah, just like I know that there's different lingo that we use in our process, in the publication process here, and just letting you know, like, this is an entirely new edition. So this is different from a reprint, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So because it's an entirely new edition, it is something that is our our uh, our caveats for getting a PDF are going to be really different. For the diversity and inclusion, it's much updated. The 10th through 12th grade material hadn't been updated at all since it first came out in the early 2000s. So every workshop, as we've talked about before, but just reiterating that every workshop includes some insights and some revisions from people who we call our accountability reviewers. And those folks hold diverse identities relating to race and sexual orientation and gender and socioeconomics and ability. So we have them review our material to make sure that we are being as inclusive as we possibly can. There's a more expansive representation in the readings and the role plays and the scenarios, as Melanie mentioned briefly before. There's some updated video options, and we've included some Canadian and US resources in this edition.
So let's look at our table of contents. The first, we have 3 units, so exploring sexuality and identity, relationships and desires and decisions. The what is sexuality is very similar to what was in earlier editions. It's sort of an introduction to the program. The sexual body is anatomy and physiology and function. Body image is kind of self-explanatory. And then we have a workshop on gender. And I would say that all of these, while these are topics that we have tackled in the past, we are tackling them in different ways now. So much more inclusive of different types of bodies and different types of anatomies and normalizing all the uniqueness of the human experience. Attraction is what you could also call sexual orientation. We approach that from differentiating between who you're attracted to romantically or socially versus who you might be attracted to sexually versus what your actual behavior might be, which could be different. So we're building these critical thinking skills and helping teenagers relate that to their lived experience or their anticipated future experience. Healthy relationships, communication online and in person. In the first edition, we didn't have to cover much about online, but we are certainly now. And consent, that's of course a core belief that we have is the importance of training people to understand the value of consent. In Unit 3, sexual expression and pleasure. And this is an important workshop because a lot of sex ed curricula talk about behaviors and safety, but they don't talk about pleasure. And both the UCC and the UUA are committed to honoring the body and its potential for experiencing pleasure of all kinds. And so that's although the our secular version doesn't talk about our faith beliefs, we do honor the commitment to talking about sexual pleasure. Caring for our sexual selves is the safer sex kind of what kind of health care you might need, not just related to safer sex, but just keeping your body healthy. Reproductive responsibility, of course, talks about contraception and the decision making that might be involved in that. And then we have sexuality through adulthood and celebration. We do not have a whole separate workshop about celebrating the end of our whole lives. It's more of a suggestion of here are some things to think about to celebrate the end of your program.
Emily, I'm so glad you brought up the pleasure thing. I just want to just
Mhm.
focus on that just for a second, because I think one of the things that some people don't put together with it, but I imagine there are many people on this call or watching this webinar who do. And that is that pleasure and consent are really, really related.
Yeah,
So if we're talking to young people about knowing what they want to say no to, they also need to know what they want to say yes to.
yeah.
And so knowing what gives you pleasure and what doesn't is an important part of that. And that can be like not only physical pleasure, but what makes you feel good emotionally and what makes you feel okay about what you're doing. And also, the idea of wanting to make sure that this is an experience that you have in your life that is pleasurable, because we know there's research out there that is differentiated between gender. And I think it was Peggy Ornstein that did just a fantastic study of, I think it was 3,000 young adult women in late high school and early college, and their definition of good sex was it didn't hurt. And so we
Mm.
hope for a much better experience of sexuality by all people involved in a relationship. And that includes being able to understand what you want to do and what you don't want to do.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this more as we go through workshop by workshop,
Yeah.
but before people get distracted by it, by thinking it's all about
Okay.
sexual pleasure,
Yes.
we are also acknowledging asexuality and the fact that asexual people may not choose to have whatever they define as sexual behavior, but they are still capable of sensual pleasure. And,
Absolutely.
and so we honor that throughout this curriculum. Okay, so our first workshop, Amy, would you like to kick this one off?
Sure. So this is a pretty standard workshop. There's welcome and introductions, and of course, you need to make a group covenant, which is such an important foundational part of the whole program. And even though some of these things might not seem super sexy, they're really important to give an orientation so the young people know what you are going to talk about, to let them know what their Bill of Rights is, what the assumptions are for this program, and then to dive into some of the circles of sexuality, which have been revised for this edition, and so have the assumptions, and doing some exploring of values, and then having reflection and time for the question box. So it's a pretty standard opening one, but we get into a little bit of the meat with the circles of sexuality and also laying that groundwork with a lot of really good foundational material.
Yeah, and if you notice that blue thing at blue bubble at the bottom, because in the past, we only worked on one revision at a time. This has been a very busy year. We've worked on the K1 curriculum and the 7 to 9 reprint and also this edition. The benefit of that, despite our going a little bit bonkers, trying to work on all three at one time, is that we were able to look at the assumptions with our new Our Whole Lives Advisory Council, which is made up of a diverse group of OWL trainers with a lot of lived experience and also Our Whole Lives experience. And we reviewed the program assumptions and made some adaptations, which we will go over. But because we were working on 10, 12, and 7 to 9 at the same time, the reprint, the 2024 reprint of 7 to 9, includes these revised program assumptions, as does the new posters that are available. We'll talk about those later. So whatever you do, make sure that you're using the new program assumptions because they really align with more current thinking about sexuality. Okay, so let's read these new program assumptions. So you might recall that the first assumption in the former assumptions was all human beings are sexual. And we have wanted to make more of a nuanced interpretation of that. So I will read this one and then Amy, perhaps you can read the next slide. Human beings begin developing genitals and reproductive organs in utero and need to continue to care for them throughout their lives. Sexuality is a good part of the human experience. Sexuality includes much more than sexual behavior. It also includes physical changes, gender identity, feelings and thoughts about bodies and relationships, and social interactions.
Sexuality affects human beings throughout the lifespan. It is natural to express sexual feelings in a variety of ways, and people engage in healthy sexual behavior for a variety of reasons, including to express caring and love, to experience intimacy and connection with one another, to share pleasure, to bring new life into the world, and to have fun and relax.
Sexuality in our society is damaged by violence, exploitation, alienation, dishonesty, abuse of power, and the treatment of persons as objects. It is healthier for young teens to postpone partnered sexual activity that could lead to unintended physical or emotional health outcomes. Now, if you were to compare the old version to the new version, some of the differences will become obvious. But this one in particular, this last one, initially we said it is healthier for young adolescents to postpone sexual activity, and or to postpone sexual intercourse. We really wanted to get away from the idea that any kind of self-exploration was harmful. So the way that this is reworded allows people to explore in a variety of ways that are lesser risk, perhaps emotionally or physically, but still encourages people or a lot. I wouldn't say encourages, allows space for those who want to explore their own bodies and their own pleasure.
Yeah, and I think the other piece about that, some feedback we received, is that word intercourse for many people, even though for as long as I've been working with our whole lives, which is a long time, we've defined intercourse as oral, anal, and vaginal. There was a lot of feedback that people still think about that as a penis and vagina activity. And so
Mhm.
we wanted to expand that to just say that we're it's healthier to think about those unintended physical or emotional outcomes and to again do things that feel okay emotionally, right? Not only physically but also emotionally to both or all people involved. The other thing I wanted to say is I know that on one of the previous slides, I think it was the second one, it talked about uh or maybe it was the first one, I guess it was that sexuality is a good part of the human experience. And I just want to reiterate, I think there's probably most people know who are familiar with the first edition, but if you're new to Our Whole Lives, that when we're talking about sexuality, it's writ large. It is about the circles and it is about sensuality and intimacy and identity and caring for our reproductive parts and avoiding sexualization and power and manipulation. So focusing on the goodness of that, as opposed to it being shameful or secret or bad or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really core piece of this program.
Yeah, and
The
I would just
assumption
like
that yeah.
to toss in there that you're when we talk about this, that this is the kind of deep thinking that we and our accountability readers and our advisory committee council put into this. We don't, it's not just the me and Amy show. It's
Oh no. So many people, so many people.
Amy, would you like to talk about the circles?
Sure, sure. So this is a circles of sexuality model, and it has been updated over the years. So I think that's one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit later on is how to know that you've got the most updated stuff. But know that we have changed some of the words that are in the circles, and one of the key things that's been changed in the latest model of the circles of sexuality is the term assigned sex at birth. And this has been a very deep, prolonged discussion with many, many people. And we have come to this decision of using this term for a number of reasons. One of them is that the term biological sex has pretty much been weaponized. And so we want to honor that has felt very damaging and traumatizing to many non-binary or trans folks. At the same time, we have also had some consultation with folks who have lived experience with intersex traits and who are advocates for intersex traits and people who live with them. And so those folks are saying to us, and this is our biological sex. So we're moving towards having a deeper discussion about what that means, and you're going to be hearing and seeing more in different levels of the curriculum the term sex traits. And this is the reason that we still are using assigned sex at birth is because the reality is in the United States that even if you are born with intersex traits, there are very, very, very few places where you still will not be assigned the sex of male or female at birth. And so that is why that is there. And so that we're sticking with that right now. And know that there will be a lot more discussion about that in our trainings. And you will see more information about that as we're moving ahead. Wanting to honor all people and the beautiful diversity of creation, and to be able uh, to do so in a way that is not harmful to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this, if you purchase the reprint of the 7 to 9 second edition, this new circles model will be in there. It will obviously be in the 10 through 12 second edition. And if you get the posters, which we'll talk about later, this is what you'll see. So what we would ask is that if you have any materials that use the word biological sex, that you, if you don't want to use ours, that you recreate yours. It's easier if you use ours, but that you stop using the term biological sex. That would be our request to you. Okay, so workshop 2, the sexual body. So this is again the standard format for, aside from the first workshop, which it has a little bit different format because you're just introducing everything. With the workshop 2, we start the regular format, which is a re-entry. Hello, how was your week? There's a kind of a discussion question and then a reading that introduces the topic for that workshop. And then we move into the activities. So when we talk about name that body part, that's a typical, what is this part and what is it called? But as I mentioned before, we have new race and body diverse illustrations for that. We also have added a new third page of illustrations. So one is penis, scrotum, and related structures, and the other is vulva, vagina, and related structures. And then we have a third page that is not for labeling, but it shows diverse kinds of genitals to show in a sample of how wonderfully unique genitals can be. And it's not for any purpose other than, hey, your body might look something like this, or you might encounter a partner, or you might someday have a child who has a body something like this, or you might have a body that you have adapted through medical intervention to look like this, or you might encounter a partner who does. So it's not a lot of drawings, it's 5 illustrations, but it just shows here's some other ways bodies can look, and isn't that great? Then we talk about some of the language about bodies and sexual fun and function. For the first time, we're talking about some of the challenges that people can encounter. And this is important because if all people read are romance novels or books that say sex happens this way and it's all in and it'll work great, then people aren't prepared if something like a gymnast who's at the height of their physical form has really tight muscles that create sexual pain. So we just want to name these are some things that can happen. Or if you're on antidepressants, it can make you lose any kind of interest in sex that you might have, and there are some workarounds if you talk to your provider, healthcare provider. So we're, it's certainly more advanced content than we would have for grade 7 to 9, but it is appropriate for high schoolers who are then going into college and encountering, more adult kind of sexuality things. It's important to consider that this may be the last human sexuality, sex education that they get. So we are intentionally introducing more challenging topics. Hey, Amy?
Yeah, so we have a whole workshop now on body image. We had some activities about it before, but this is a whole new workshop. So there is a whole big activity about exploring social norms and affirming all different kinds of bodies, different abilities, different sizes, um, all that kind of thing. And then there is a redone self-portrait exercise that is more private and has different ways that people can engage with that. So those are and you can see there are not a ton of activities, so there's a lot more time to go more in depth and do some more processing, which is what we love about our whole lives, right? It's more than just an information dump. It's here's some things to really reflect about. We know how incredibly important body image is in teens and kids and young adults. We know how fraught that is in our culture. And so we wanted to really give this some due diligence to hopefully give some our young people some really healthy frameworks to work with and some messages to give themselves and to think about when they're thinking about other people's bodies as well.
Yeah, and Amy, I appreciate that you mentioned the privacy thing. So we have been much more intentional in the work that we're doing now than that was done decades
Many
ago.
years ago, yeah.
About you have a right to pass, you have a right not to show things to people, and in this we're intentionally not saying, hey, draw a picture of yourself and slap it on the wall. You know, we want people to be able to experience some of this self-reflective material by themselves, and they can talk about later what was that experience like without actually sharing their personal drawings or thoughts. Okay, so now we have a whole new way of looking about gender. For those of you who are used to using the SIEO model, it used to be sex, but it's assigned sex at birth, gender identity, gender expression, and orientation. We're no longer using that side by side grid. Now it's just sort of a list as you're going to be talking about things as you go through it in a kind of a linear format. And we did that because what we found is that despite the facilitators saying this can match to this and this can match to that, sometimes there was a tendency to say, well, if you're assigned male at birth, then you're going to be thinking of yourself as a man and you're going to express yourself in a masculine fashion. So by changing the way we're presenting the information, we're getting away from that assumption of anything necessarily having to match another. And we made that change in the 7 to 9 edition as well. There's an optional guest panel, and there are instructions on how to create a guest panel. Again, if you're going to have a guest panel, you want to think about that when you're doing like workshop 1, so that you have your guests all signed up. If you choose not to have a guest panel because, you know, sometimes it's hard to find guests, we do have another activity that you can use that is kind of looking at gender messages in social media and assessing them. Okay, workshop 5.
Workshop 5 about attraction is again where there's reading and reentry, and then there's exploring different orientations, and kind of also another thing that we were looking at more in this edition of the curriculum is kind of harnessing the wisdom in the room, right? There's a lot of wisdom and lived experience and understanding of gender and orientation among young people today in a lot of places. Defining after exploring that, the different terminology and all those kind of things, also then defining what heteronormativity is and what homophobia and misogyny are. And at this moment, this feels like really important work for us to do and to not assume that kids understand that, but to really give them some deep understanding of some forces that are going on in our culture and to push back and kind of disrupt that a little bit. And then next steps, what are they going to do? And a reflection and question box again. So again, like we said many times, we put a lot of thought into this about how to go deeper. What other ways can we get the youth involved in the conversations? What do they need? And how do we steer, guide the conversation, but not take it over.
Yeah, and this is a video heavy. There are lots of videos. Now, if you don't happen to have internet access in your setting, that's okay. There are activities that allow you to, if you're not using that video, here's an alternate. But if you can possibly use the videos, do try to do that because they spice things up a little bit. It's not just people talking all the time. It's creating different voices and the videos that Nadine found and that we found focus on young voices, teen and young adult voices. Okay, so now we want to talk about healthy relationships. And one of the things that I love about this workshop is it entails a lot of self-reflection about what is it that I want? Not me personally, but the young person in your workshop. What is it that the participant wants? What are their expectations? And it's framed in a way that even if they don't have necessarily great role models among their friend circles or even their families, they can really think for themselves about, oh, these are the possibilities available in healthy relationships. And even if I'm not seeing that in my circle, I can still aspire to that. So it helps people think about what do they want at this point in their time. There's a variety of activities that talk about boundaries and intimacy and what I this ending relationships with integrity is something that I think is really important too. You hear sometimes about people, not just teens, but celebrities dumping each other by text. And one of the things that this workshop talks about is that's not okay. This person was important to you at one time. How can you wrap this up and close this relationship in a way that you have some closure, and you can live with.
I would say too, I think that again, like at this moment, we're recording this in November of 2024. And at this moment in history, it feels really important to put a spotlight on what does healthy relationship look like. And that can be in our romantic and sexual relationships, but also in other relationships that we have. How do we communicate? How do we respect each other? How do we build closeness and care? So I think that that's just really important right now.
Yeah. Okay, would you like to talk about this workshop, Amy?
Brand new workshop, communication online and in person. We have some similar things about communication styles, but there's a whole new activity about the social media brainstorm. We know and that social media is a thing that is such a giant part of many, many youth's lives right now. And we also are aware of how much research there is about the effects of that. And so, again, with using sort of the our whole lives model, we're not telling them to or not to, but we're saying, hey, think about this and think about the ways that social media shows up in your life. How do you use it? What could be some advantages, some disadvantages, that kind of thing. And then we're also having an opportunity for them to explore when they see things online or how someone presents themselves online. And this isn't just youth. I know adults, this is super prevalent in adult land as well, right? What are you not seeing? What is not showing up, and what could be underneath that, and seeing people in a more 3D kind of way than maybe what you see on a screen. So those are some of the things that get explored in this workshop. So we're really excited about that for and the feedback that we got from the field testing was great on that too. Just like what are these conversations going to be like with your youth? So.
Mhm. And consent, always a really important topic for us to talk about. So, again, as Amy mentioned earlier, we frame consent as part of pleasurable relationships. That, you can be in a relationship that has a lot of broken boundaries, but it's not going to be necessarily pleasurable. and not necessarily healthy. So how can you introduce consent as a part of building a healthy, comfortable, pleasurable relationship? And a couple years ago, there was this whole teacup thing. You don't pour somebody tea if they don't want tea. And what this does is it goes a step further than that and talks about the social pressures and the cultural pressures that can make people inclined to say yes when they really mean no, and how to recognize that and how not to move forward if you're getting any signs that somebody really wants to just put the brakes on. We have in the first edition, there was a story that was very clearly a female identified person and a male identified person, and it was titled it was what, a story of date rape or something. What we have done in this time, we've created, and we have tested the heck out of this in owl trainings, but the story Jesse and Caden is a story about how two people, totally gender neutral, so people can interpret these characters however they will, but it explores how two people can engage in a sexual experience from extremely different perspectives. And it engages teens in how did that happen? Where did that communication go wonky? And what could have been done to clarify consent prior to that going awry? I'm really pleased with the way this activity goes, but I will say it doesn't it does mean that the facilitators have to really prepare for this. As you facilitate this, you want to make sure that whoever is leading this activity is has addressed any kind of sexual trauma they might have had, so that they can be comforting, objective presences without dealing with their own issues when they present this. Because one of the things that can happen when we approach these difficult topics is that people can reveal things. They can reveal pain and experiences, even though we say don't, overshare in our whole lives, sharing can happen. So we do ask that you take this preparation really seriously before you enter into this workshop. This is not I'm going to do my 15 minutes of prep before I do this. I'm going to read this a week ahead of time, and I'm going to work with my co-facilitator, and we're going to figure this out. It is field tested. We know it works. But we also need facilitators to do their due diligence in terms of this.
Yeah, and I want to just jump in too and say another thing to think about is we've thought quite a bit about how to deal with this topic and how important it is to find a way to have young people think through things ahead of time, but also not re-traumatize anyone who maybe has already experienced abuse or assault. So there's some information in the curriculum about how to deal with that and how you want to set this up. So I think that's, like as Molly said, it's really important to especially in this workshop. There's a few, like you want to get a good guest panel together, like it takes a little bit longer, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Amy, workshop 9.
Sexual expression and pleasure. So there's it's a new workshop. It's also some fun new activities about sensations of pleasure. So really understanding um, some pleasurable sensations that we might feel on our skin that have nothing to do with sex, but that also are then inclusive of anybody who's asexual. So thinking about, because if I like having a feather or I don't on my wrist or my arm, that can help inform what I might want in other situations. So, or that I don't want to be in other situations. All that is really good. There's another connection with the previous workshop about consent and communication and pleasure. So that's an important part of a thread going through all these things. Like we're starting, with the understanding what we understand about sexuality, about that whole circle of sensuality, going through like pleasure, consent, all of these things are woven together. And then understanding how pleasure and identities and sexuality can be connected, and what that means for you. So all of these things are new and we think really important, especially right now.
I'm so excited. I'm really excited for people to use this and begin exploring this material. So caring for our sexual selves. So we brought back some popular activities for this one. STI overview. I will go back to when we did engage a sexual health and education expert to look at all the material that we have and make sure that all the information in this edition is as accurate as of the time of printing. We used to just have a condom demonstration, and now we also talk about dams, which are, for those who aren't not familiar, it's sort of a rectangle of latex or nitrile that can be laid over the genitals during oral or manual stimulation. So we actually talk about that as well. And when we talk about condoms, we don't only talk about external condoms, we're also talking about internal condoms as well. The condom race is sort of, here you've talked about how to use protection, and now we're going to see in action how people can, check the date and put the thing on the kind of demonstrator. It's just a real popular activity. The birth control continuum is a long-standing popular activity talking about efficacy and usage. And then this new activity about negotiating safer sex with a partner actually has scenarios that people can role play. It's scripted, so people don't have to, in the spur of the moment, think of what they would say. But it's like, how would you have that conversation with somebody who says, nah, condoms are uncomfortable, I don't need one, or nah, I don't have an STI, I don't need one. Or, oh, it's not that time of the month, I'm not going to get pregnant. So it's actual practice having those conversations, which can be awkward. And so we get rid of some of that awkwardness within this workshop.
Yep. Reproductive responsibilities. Again, there's some new and some old favorites here. There is conception and pregnancy toss across, just kind of reviewing, making sure people understand how conception works. Just a review there. What are the options if someone becomes pregnant? And we know that those are now different depending on where you live. So that is one thing that is new. The abortion debate role play, again, different depending on where you live, what the options are. But this debate, it takes place where someone could get an abortion if they wanted to, but to decide and to have a conversation with a whole bunch of people with a bunch of different opinions about it. And then supporting people who choose whatever parenting decision they choose. These are applicable across the United States. Again, anything that is, all of these are something to think about, even though there might be restrictions on what is available in your area. We're also aware that people might be going to another area for college, so they might need to know this information, or as a young adult if they move or something like that. And it's also applicable in Canada.
Yeah. As the time that we are printing this, and times change, and so we will all need to be cognizant of what is permissible in our states of residence and where we're presenting all at the time. But one of the approaches that we believe firmly in is saying this is what it is. This is what abortion is. This is what contraception is. This is what an IUD is. We're not telling people here's where to go in your neighborhood, because that probably would get would cause some problems. But to say that this exists, this technology exists, or this option exists, currently, we believe that within our faith communities, we can do this. And if you're not in a faith community, then we would encourage you to think about what the rules are in whatever setting you're using OWL in, and adapt as necessary to your setting. Okay, so envisioning your future is kind of what's ahead. Here you are in college, in high school, and you're taking this program, and what are some of the changes that you can expect across the life cycle? It includes an activity about writing notes to yourself at varied points in your life, and then putting them in envelopes and hanging on to them, and encouraging people to read them at those points in their later life. And again, an encouragement. This is a lot for high schoolers to go through and for facilitators to go through. And so we do encourage celebration. And there are some ideas for what you can do for celebration. Um, uh, it can be something as simple as bringing in pizza on the last day of class, or it can be gifts or certificates or whatever you want it to be. And the UCC resources and the UUA bookstore have gifts that you can make available. But just be aware, we didn't script a celebration. This is for you. So now let's look at some other updates that we've got. Amy, K1.
Yes, we now have 3 editions of K1, y'all. We have the secular one that's been out for a couple years, but we also have a UCC edition and a Unitarian Universalist edition. So, so please know that those are available. If you don't have this, we're super excited about this new format. And what we want to say about this is that I don't, some of you may recall that pretty soon after we published the first round of K1, we had to update some pages. And so that is happening again. And so we will put in the resources for this webinar on the YouTube playlist, the information about the pages you can go to check. And we just do recommend that you check those pages, the facilitator resource pages, every time you do an Our Whole Lives program, to see if there's any updates on there. When we become aware, the first one was we became aware of an organization we had recommended that posted some anti-trans material. So we didn't want to recommend them anymore. And there were some other things that happened. So so just please check just to make sure you have the most updated version. The Unitarian Universalist version has a lot of material that brings in different pieces of incorporating religious education practices and questions and faith and the core principles. Did I get that right? Or values?
Yeah, values.
I know there's been a change, right? And then the UCC version has some retold Bible stories and some really beautiful illustrations for those. So so we really hope that if you are doing K1 OWL in a faith community, that you get the faith editions, because they're really awesome.
And I would like to add that for those who religious educators who might be UU and might incorporate Bible stories in some of your Time for All Ages lessons or some of your religious education. Amy engaged a fabulous illustrator to first of all, engaged a UCC minister to retell several Bible stories in a way that is accessible to very young children, and that is rare. And then engaged an illustrator to create these drawings that are sort of like Disney-esque, so they would be familiar to young children. The style of art would be familiar, but what's fabulous about them is that they are racially accurate for the geography of those Bible stories.
Yeah.
And
There's no
so
white people in them, y'all. Just saying.
No white people. Um, but so it's not and these are stories that may not have any applicability to your Our Whole Lives program, but may have applicability to other times that you include Bible stories in your work. So please consider, again, if you buy Owl UU, you can request a free PDF of Owl UCC and vice versa. And it's just a fabulous resource.
Uh,
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Amy. Did you have something
oh,
to say?
oh no, go ahead. I was just
Okay.
like, woohoo, we're talking
So,
to the choir here. Good.
so Owl grade 7 to 9, it came out in
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
A lot has changed, and a couple years ago we provided recommended updates, but this 2024 reprint came out in it's September of this year. Not only includes all those recommended updates, but includes more updates because we were able to take advantage of our evaluation of the 10-12 curriculum and incorporate those scientific corrections into 7 to 9. So I highly recommend that you actually purchase this 2024 reprint. Or if your budget doesn't allow that, send us a picture of your first edition and we can give you a PDF at no cost. But that, you know, it's hard sometimes to work from a PDF. But when you go to the bookstore, you'll see this little note where I've circled in yellow that this is the September 24 reprint that you're getting. You're not getting the 2014 reprint. Um, yes, can you add all the recommended resources? Yes, but when we produced that list of recommended resources, that was from 2022, and this includes much more. So we highly recommend, if your budget allows it, and if your budget doesn't allow it, beg, borrow, or steal, ask somebody generous in your congregation to help you out. Amy, posters.
We have not the posters on the left. We do not have the Owls of Eastern North America on there. There's so many different ones, though. That's one sort of a little like pastime that Melanie and I have that send each other different owl memes. Just so yes, that does happen. But we do have the updated and new Our Whole Lives Bill of Rights poster and the updated assumptions and the updated circles of sexuality. If you email us at owl@uua.org or owl@ucc.org, we will send you that PDF file and you can print out posters in whatever size works for you. And then you don't have to draw them.
Yep.
You can draw them if that's your thing, but if it's not your thing, like if you're me and that's not my thing, then you can just print them out and that's
The assumptions in particular, when I first started facilitating, I'm like, oh my gosh, every time I taught an OWL class, I was writing those assumptions. I don't know why I didn't think to keep them from year to year. All right, looking ahead. Okay, I am very proud to say this is the project. So Amy Johnson and Kristen Defer worked together on OWL 4.6. They were the co-authors of the second edition. And we have gotten so many requests over the years for the updated parent guide. Now, we did update it when 4.6 was published in 2017. And we did some light editing of the K1 parent guide, sort of, for the gender binary language and whatnot, but we hadn't revised the curriculum yet. And what we decided this time around is that rather than have a print publication that constantly has to be updated on an irregular schedule, because we're not usually updating 4.6 and K1 at the same time, that we would take advantage of this model that we have of the Under Your Wing video series that the authors of K1, Dorian Solat and Marshall Miller, created these videos for helping parents and caregivers talk about topics that are addressed in the K1 curriculum. And now we're expanding that into the 4.6 curriculum with Amy and Kirsten, so that you don't have to purchase a book anymore. They will be having these videos that talk about how to have these conversations, and here are some books that you can use, and there's some ways to do that. So it's just a continuation of that series. So, and we are removing any mention of the parent guide in the 4/6 reprint, so that you don't have to worry about that. Amy, would you like to say anything else about this?
No, I was just gonna go work. The plan is we haven't done it yet, so they're not up yet, but our hope is that they'll be up early in 2025. And Kirsten and I are both excited to do this and to bring in some other voices with us to have conversations, kind of like the K1 under your wing, which is, workshop by workshop. What are some things that kids are curious about at this age about this? What are some ways that you can respond? What are some resources that are available for you? So we're really excited. So
Yeah,
stay tuned.
and these as the K1 videos are, these will be a free resource posted on the UCC website as well as the UUA website.
Yep.
Looking forward. So we have had a heck of a time getting field test sites for young adult, but we have some more going on right now. And our goal is to release hard copies of the young adult curriculum for use in fall 2025. And not content with reprints of 4/6 and 7-9, we are actually beginning revisions of both of those. So those will come out. We anticipate 7-9 being ready in early 26 and 4/6 coming out in 2026 at some point. And again, so much can happen. When we were working on 10-12, we were going full steam ahead, and then COVID happened, and Amy and I totally shifted gears to do online trainings and taking flight webinars and everything, and that kind of consumed us. So please don't submit these dates in your calendar. We're doing the best we can and in projecting these deadlines.
Yeah, and I just also want to say one of the things is that every time we do a new edition now, like we did with the K1 and we will be doing with 10-12, and the young adult, and then the third edition of 7-9 and 4-6, that will be in the new format.
Yeah.
So the long game for us is that when we have them in the new format, we can update things so much more easily for you. So that facilitator resources page where we post updates is going to get populated with more and more things by level over time. And that will be where our hope is that will just be so much better than us saying, which version do you have? When was yours published? All that kind of stuff, so that you have you're able to access yourselves the most up-to-date stuff all the time.
Yeah. And that's going to be a practice of, putting in your calendar that every time you run an OWL program, you go to our websites and you download the most recent page updates. So OWL for adults is currently our oldest curriculum and the most outdated at this point. And so it's not that you can't use it, but we do have some recommended updates that we will be republishing. But in the interim, we're thinking of creating sort of a combination of, these are workshops from OWL for young adults and OWL for older adults that we can use to create an OWL adult curriculum. So we're still thinking about how we want to do that. My advice would be, if you plan to offer OWL for adults, that you wait a little bit until we can post these updated, recommended updates for you. Or use the young adult curriculum when it comes out next fall, or OWL for older adults. And then, one of the challenges that we have is that the younger programs, 4-6 and 7-9, get higher usage. So we are pushing to update those faster. That's not to say that OWL for adults isn't important, but we really do want to focus on what our users tell us are their greatest needs.
Yep.
So where can you find Our Whole Lives? Well, you can find it at In Spirit, the UUA bookstore, which is easy enough to find. Both of us and the UCC resources are the name explains how to find us. The OWL videos are in two places. They're both on the UUA site and they're on the UCC site. And of course, you're always welcome to email me and Amy if you can't find something.
Yeah,
All you have to do is to reach out to owl@ucc.org or owl@uua.org, and either Amy or I or our helpers will be able to get you the answers that you need.
absolutely. I think that's our info for today. Thank you for your patience with this not being broadcast live. I hope that this is helpful for you. And any questions you have, you can reach out to me or Melanie. And we will not have a webinar in December. That's our time we reserve for our to be with our trainers, our folks who lead the Our Whole Lives trainings. And we will see you back in January. So much peace to you all, and thank you for all the good work that you continue to do for Our Whole Lives.
Take care, everybody.